Hello guys, today we're going to be talking about animal and plant cells, and this is 4.1.1.2. And today students should be able to learn about subcellular structures, which are what we call organelles. Okay, these are just another name for subcellular structures you might see in your textbooks called organelles. Okay, so the things we're going to learn about specifically are these organelles from the nucleus, cytoplasm, cell membrane, mitochondria, ribosomes, and what they are. We'll learn about this, and this is in plants and animals. Okay, so that's something to note, plants and animals. This is what we're going to look at, and this is only on plants. We're just going to have a brief overview of what these are and the functions of these are, and we're going to also look at this, which is the cellulose and how this strengthens the cell, and just the basics of these. And then this part here means that we're gonna in the exam you're gonna need to be able to label this if you ever see it, or make simple drawings. Okay, you don't need to do fancy drawings, just simple drawings that you need to make on the cells. So let's go to the thing. So this is 4.1.1.2 animals and plant cells. So what do we learn here? So let's look at the definitions that I've written down already. So what is a nucleus? The nucleus contains genetic material that controls the cell activity. Okay, and if you were to draw it, it looks basically like this within the cell, and it has genetic material, which is your DNA, your chromosomes, and all that. So then there is a cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is a gel-like substance where most of the chemical reactions happen, and you also have enzymes in there as well. If you know from Key Stage 3, enzymes are biological catalysts. Okay, we'll go more into enzymes later in the different specifications, and it basically is this surrounding area here, full of nothing here. Well, it's not full of nothing, it's actually full of a lot of different substances here. It just looks like in diagrams there's nothing, but there's actually something here, and a lot of chemical reactions happen here. Funny enough, this is where something called anaerobic respiration happens, but this is not important for you to learn actually at this stage. This here is what we call the cell membrane, right? This outside here, that's called the cell membrane. And the mitochondria, all right, is where aerobic respiration occurs. You must say this word, aerobic respiration, because anaerobic respiration happens in the cytoplasm. Okay, so we will learn more about this when we go to do respiration, but anaerobic respiration happens in the cytoplasm, aerobic respiration happens in the mitochondria. So when you ever are asked what is the function of mitochondria, remember, aerobic respiration occurs here. So why do you need to do aerobic respiration? Well, you need to respire to make energy, so you make the cells work. Cells need energy, and energy doesn't come free. You need to do respiration to do that. Energy, in terms of biology, is usually a substance called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. All you need to know is ATP exists. They didn't specify this in your specification about ATP, they just said energy. So if you just wrote energy in the exam, if you wrote ATP as well, that's also great. The ribosomes, this is where proteins are made, specifically the translation process of the protein synthesis mechanism. If you're watching this as a revision, you'll know what translation is. If you don't, we will cover this later in another spec. Check the other videos on protein translation and transcription. You'll know what this means afterwards. So this is just, when you write what ribosomes are, just say this is where proteins are made, or this is where protein synthesis occurs. Okay, synthesis just means making. Okay, so another word you can use is protein synthesis. Right, let's just draw out some of these the other structures I've been talking about. So the mitochondria looks like this, and it looks like a matrix like this. If you draw it like this, you'll be fine. That's what a mitochondria looks like. Ribosomes just look like little dots around the cells. Okay, so they're just little dots that you need to draw. Define the other following features are only in plants. Okay, these other features I've already mentioned are in plants and animals. Okay, remember these are in plants and animals. These are just in plants. So chloroplasts actually are in plants, and they look green. So they're like green thing. And that's green because inside these chloroplasts, right, they have something called chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is this green substance. And what it does, it helps the plants to undergo something called photosynthesis, which enables plants to turn CO2 into oxygen. Okay, it's more complicated just than CO2 and oxygen comes out, but you'll learn this when we're learning about photosynthesis, and we'll go into more detail as to what photosynthesis is. Then we have the vacuole. The vacuole is a cell sap which has a sugar and salt weak solution. Okay, that's all you need to know. That's what the vacuole is. The cell wall is made of a cellulose, which is a very strong substance. You don't need to know what cellulose is made up of. You'll learn this in A levels. And cell walls are used to support and strengthen the cell. Now, this becomes really important in a question which could come up as to, let's say you put a plant cell wall, question, yeah, and you have an animal cell, okay. If you were to put both of these in water, which one will survive? Well, the answer is this: the plant cell, because it has the cell wall. All right, the cell wall is made up of these cellulose molecules, and this makes it very strong. So when you put it in pure water, something called osmosis happens, and water comes into that cell. Okay, we'll learn more about osmosis later in another spec as well. More water comes in, and what happens is that cell, there's more water getting pushed, water's trying to then push out, and it gets stuck there, and it makes a very strong turgid cell. Okay. On the other hand, if you have a cell membrane, no cell wall, like animal cells, water comes in through osmosis, like if you put it in pure water, and what happens? It bursts. It just bursts out into cell, right? And then everything is just ruined. Okay, the cell dies. So that's why plant cell walls can survive in that sort of high water environment, but plant cells can't. Right? So you might want to have a pause and have a go at identifying some of these structures here, and then we can go through it. So, alright, so now you've had a pause and you've gone through it. Let's go through it. So the nucleus, as you know, is this bit here, right? The cytoplasm is just everything in between. The cell membrane is the outside bit. The mitochondria is this funny looking thing, and the ribosomes are these little things. Alright, the ribosomes are also in this bit here called the rough endoplasmic reticulum. You don't need to know it for your spec, so don't worry if you don't need to know this. Just learn about these ribosomes here, which we call free ribosomes. In plants, this is what we call the vacuole here. The vacuole is this bit here. The chloroplast is this little thing here. This is the chloroplast. The cell wall, can you see how there's slightly two different things? This outside bit here is the cell wall. Okay, and inside the cell wall is the cell membrane, inside it. Okay, the cell membrane and cell wall are made of different things as well. But we don't need to go into detail on that, but just know that cell wall is made of cellulose, and that's what you need to know. Cell membrane is made of something called the phospholipid bilayer. However, it wasn't mentioned in your spec, so we won't go into further detail on this. Alright, so I hope that's helped you out and you've learned something today. And now we're just going to go into extras as to how you could further develop your knowledge if you wanted to.
So other things you can look at are looking into the nucleus. You can look at what genetic materials look like, what the DNA, chromosome things are. We'll learn this actually in the spec. You can look at cytoplasm, and when I mentioned anaerobic respiration, there's something particular you can look at if you wish to, and this is something called glycolysis. Alright, that might be of interest to you, and this is a without using any oxygen way of making respiration, with making energy. And then you can look at photosynthesis and the different sort of chemical reactions that occur to make the oxygen and glucose. Then you can look at what the different types of cell walls there are. So cell wall types, like in bacteria, how that is made up of actually peptidoglycan. Okay, peptidoglycan. So you can look at these sort of things, right? So you can look at what the cell walls are. Now looking down, if you can look at there are other different organelles that you might want to be more familiar with, and you want to learn more about that. So you look at different organelles. So like what we call the RER, the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, or you can look at what something called lysosomes do. What do they do? All right. So you might want to learn more about there are other organelles. So search up more about organelles and what the other ones are and their functions, if that is something you wish to explore.